The auctioneer's gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the dusty marketplace, and Rowan Thatcher knew he was about to make either the wisest or most foolish decision of his 24 years on this earth. One copper coin sat heavy in his calloused palm, the absolute last piece of money he possessed in the entire world, and he had just bid it on an orc woman nobody else wanted. The crowd of farmers and merchants parted as Rowan stepped forward, their expressions ranging from disgust to morbid curiosity. The auctioneer, a portly man with sweat staining his collar despite the autumn chill, looked at Rowan with undisguised contempt. "You understand what you are purchasing, boy?" the auctioneer asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "This creature comes with no guarantees. Likely disease, definitely savage. If it kills you in your sleep, that is your own fool business." Rowan ignored him and approached the wooden platform where the orc woman stood chained. She was tall, easily matching his own height of 6 feet, with broad shoulders and muscular arms that spoke of hard labor. Her skin was a deep forest green, darker than most orcs he had seen passing through town with trading caravans. 2 small tusks protruded from her lower jaw, and her black hair hung in matted tangles past her shoulders. But it was her eyes that caught him, amber-colored and burning with such fierce intelligence, and barely contained rage, that for a moment he wondered if the auctioneer's warning held merit. She wore nothing but tattered burlap that barely qualified as clothing, and her green skin was marked with bruises, cuts, and the telltale scars of prolonged mistreatment. Shackles bound her wrists and ankles, the metal rubbed raw against her flesh. "1 copper, then," the auctioneer said, snatching the coin from Rowan's hand with greedy fingers. "She is yours. May the gods have mercy on your soul." 2 guards approached with keys, clearly eager to be rid of their charge. They unlocked the chains with rough movements, shoving the orc woman forward. She stumbled but caught herself, her amber eyes never leaving Rowan's face. The guards practically ran from the platform, and the crowd began to disperse, muttering about fools and their money. Rowan stood there awkwardly, suddenly aware that he had absolutely no plan beyond this moment. He had acted on pure instinct when he saw her on that platform, something in her defiant posture calling to a part of him he did not fully understand. He cleared his throat. "Can you walk?" "My farm is about 3 miles west of town." The orc woman stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, and her first words made his jaw drop. "I know 17 ways to kill a man with my bare hands, 12 methods of cultivating crops in depleted soil, and 9 languages including the common tongue you are currently butchering with your backwater accent," she said, her voice rich and melodious despite the hoarseness of obvious thirst. "So yes, human, I believe I can manage to place 1 foot in front of the other, though I appreciate your concern for my ambulatory capabilities." Rowan blinked, then blinked again. He had expected grunts, maybe broken speech, or complete silence. He had not expected eloquence delivered with biting sarcasm. I apologize," he stammered. "I did not mean to insult you. And yet you succeeded admirably." She raised one dark eyebrow. "Are we leaving, or shall we continue standing here while your fellow humans contemplate whether to form a mob?" Rowan glanced around and realized she was right. Several townspeople were watching with hostile expressions, and he could hear angry muttering growing louder. He quickly shrugged off his worn coat and held it out to her. "Here. It is not much, but it is better than what you are wearing." She studied the coat, then his face, suspicion clear in her amber eyes. But the autumn wind chose that moment to gust through the marketplace, and Rowan saw her shiver despite her attempt to hide it. She snatched the coat and wrapped it around herself with quick, efficient movements. 3 miles, you said? Yes, west. Then we should move. I can smell a storm coming. They walked in silence through the town's main street, ignoring the stares and whispered insults. Rowan kept his eyes forward and his pace steady. His farm was modest, barely scraping by most years, but it was his home and the only thing his father had left him before fever took him 2 winters past. The land was good, or had been once, but drought and poor harvests had left him in desperate straits. He needed help working the fields if he had any hope of making it through the coming winter, and he could not afford to hire proper laborers. That was why he had gone to the auction in the first place, hoping to find some equipment or perhaps seed stock at a price he could manage. He had not expected to see a person on that platform, had not expected to feel such visceral rage at the sight of her being sold like livestock, had not expected to throw away his last copper on a stranger who might very well murder him in his sleep. The orc woman walked beside him without complaint, though he could see her limping slightly on her left leg. The burlap beneath his coat was not sufficient protection against the cold, and her feet were bare, cut and bleeding from the rough road. Guilt gnawed at his conscience. "My name is Rowan," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Rowan Thatcher." She did not respond immediately. They passed the last houses of the town and entered the open farmland beyond. Fields stretched in all directions, most already harvested for the season. The sky was gray and heavy with the promised storm. "Grisha," she said at last, "though I suppose you own even that now, having purchased me." "I did not buy you to own you," Rowan said quickly. "I need help on my farm, yes, but I am not looking for a slave. You can leave whenever you want." "Leave to go where?" Grisha's laugh was bitter. "Back to the town that sold me, into the wilderness where human settlements will shoot me on sight, to my clan who exiled me for refusing an arranged marriage to a warrior twice my age." She shook her head. "Your charity is noted, Rowan Thatcher, but we both know I have nowhere to go." They walked on in heavy silence. Rowan wanted to argue, to insist he was different from the others, but her words carried the weight of truth. He had seen how people looked at her, at all orcs. His own father had taught him that orcs were monsters, barely better than animals. It was only in recent years, after traveling to the Eastern Territories during his mandatory militia service, that Rowan had seen orcs living peacefully, trading fairly, and demonstrating the same range of emotion and intelligence as any human. It had shaken his understanding of the world. His farm appeared on the horizon, a small wooden house with a barn and several outbuildings surrounded by 40 acres of land. It looked shabby compared to the prosperous farms they had passed, the paint peeling and the fence in need of repair. But smoke rose from the chimney he had banked the fire before leaving that morning, and the sight filled him with a complicated mix of pride and shame. "It is not much," he admitted as they approached. Grisha studied the property with those sharp amber eyes. "The southern field has been overplanted. You can see where the soil is depleted. The barn needs new shingles before winter, and your well is positioned poorly for the gradient of the land. But the foundation of the house is solid, and you have a good stand of timber to the north." Rowan stared at her. "How can you possibly know all that just from looking? I told you. 12 methods of cultivating crops in depleted soil." She glanced at him. "My clan were farmers before the wars pushed us into the mountains. I was apprenticed to our master of agriculture from the age of 6. But you said you were exiled for refusing marriage. My skills with plants and soil were valued. My willingness to accept clan traditions was not." Her expression hardened. "I chose exile over a life as property to a man I did not respect. Then human raiders captured me 3 months ago, and I became property anyway. The irony is not lost on me." They reached the house, and Rowan pushed open the door. The interior was simple but clean: one large room with a fireplace, a table with 2 chairs, a cupboard for dishes, and a rope bed in the corner. A ladder led to a small loft where he kept his extra belongings. It was meant for 1 person, not 2. "There is a washtub in the barn," he said, suddenly awkward again. "I can heat water if you would like to clean up, and I have some clothes that might fit you. They were my father's, so they should be large enough." Grisha stood in the doorway, not entering. "Why did you bid on me, Rowan Thatcher? And do not tell me you need farm help. You could have hired a human laborer for a few silvers, surely." Rowan turned to face her fully. The question deserved an honest answer, even if he was not entirely sure of it himself. "I saw you standing there," he said slowly. "And I saw how they looked at you, like you were not a person. Like you were something to be used and discarded. And I remembered being in the Eastern Territories, seeing orc families living their lives, children playing, elders teaching. I remembered thinking that everything my father taught me was a lie." He met her eyes. "I only had 1 copper, but I thought maybe it would be enough, and maybe I could do one thing that was right." Grisha studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "One thing that was right," she repeated softly. "That is either very noble or very stupid. My friends usually vote for stupid." The corner of her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I believe I would like that bath now." Rowan spent the next hour hauling water from the well and heating it over the fire, then carrying the heavy buckets to the barn where he had set up the washtub. He found his father's old clothes, a shirt, trousers, and a thick wool sweater, and left them folded on a bale of hay. Then he retreated to the house to give Grisha privacy. While she bathed, he took stock of his supplies. He had enough dried beans, preserved vegetables, and salted meat to last through winter if he was careful. Flour for bread. Some cheese from his neighbor's dairy. It would be a lean season, but they would not starve. The rain began just as Grisha returned to the house, dressed in his father's clothes, which fit surprisingly well. Her hair was still wet but clean, hanging in thick black waves past her shoulders. Without the grime and blood, he could see that her features were striking: high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and those remarkable amber eyes that seemed to catch and hold the firelight. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the bath and the clothes. You are welcome." Rowan gestured to the table. "Are you hungry? I can make soup. It is nothing fancy, but it is hot. I have not eaten in 3 days. I would be grateful." While Rowan prepared the meal, Grisha examined the house with careful attention. She ran her fingers along the window frame, checking the seal. She studied the chimney draw. She tested the floorboards for weak spots. It was the behavior of someone who had learned to assess her surroundings quickly, to identify threats and weaknesses. It made him wonder what her 3 months of captivity had been like, and his stomach turned at the probable answers. They ate in silence at first, Grisha consuming her soup with efficient hunger. Rowan watched her covertly, still trying to reconcile this educated, articulate person with the savage monster he had been taught to fear. "You said you know 12 methods of cultivating depleted soil," he ventured. "Could you help me restore the southern field?" Grisha set down her spoon. "You are asking my professional opinion." "Yes. I am not a very good farmer, if I am being honest. I do my best, but the land keeps producing less each year. I thought it was just bad luck, but maybe I am doing something wrong. Many things, probably." At his expression, she added, "That was not an insult. Most farmers lack proper training. They repeat what their fathers did without understanding the principles behind it. Could you teach me? I can pay you eventually, once we have a good harvest to sell. You already paid me 1 copper, which makes me the cheapest agricultural consultant in the kingdom. This time she definitely smiled just slightly. "Yes, Rowan Thatcher, I will teach you." They spent the rest of the evening discussing farming techniques. Grisha explained concepts like crop rotation, nitrogen-fixing plants, and soil composition with the ease of a true expert. Rowan listened intently, occasionally asking questions, and feeling a growing respect for this woman who had been treated as worthless by the humans who sold her. As the night deepened and the fire burned low, the question of sleeping arrangements became unavoidable. Rowan had been dreading this moment. "You can have the bed," he said. "I will sleep in the loft where you keep your belongings, where you will have to climb past me to access them. I will manage." Grisha stood and moved to the rope bed, testing its strength. "This is sized for one person, but it will hold two if we are careful. I'm not going to take your bed, Rowan. You have shown me more kindness today than any human has in 3 months. I will not repay that by stealing your comfort. I cannot ask you to share a bed. That would not be proper." "Proper according to whom? The people who sold me at auction." She fixed him with that penetrating amber gaze. "I have slept on stone floors in a cage, sharing a bed with a man who has not once looked at me with lust or cruelty seems like luxury in comparison. But if the idea disturbs you so greatly, I will take the loft." "No, Rowan struggled to articulate his concerns. "I do not want you to feel unsafe." Something in Grisha's expression softened. "You are worried about my comfort. That is unexpected." She paused. "We will share the bed, both fully clothed, with a clear understanding that nothing untoward will happen." "Agreed." They settled in awkwardly, both lying rigidly on their respective edges of the bed with a careful gap between them. The rope creaked under their combined weight but held. Outside, the storm intensified, rain hammering against the roof and wind howling around the corners of the house. "Rowan," Grisha's voice came softly through the darkness. "Yes, thank you for the copper." "You are welcome, Grisha." He lay awake long after her breathing deepened into sleep, thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. Yesterday he had been alone, struggling to keep his farm running with no prospects and no hope. Today he had a partner, albeit an unlikely one, and for the first time in months he felt something that might have been optimism. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Rowan woke to find Grisha already up, standing at the window and watching the sunrise paint the fields in shades of gold and amber. She had braided her hair back from her face, revealing the graceful points of her ears. "The soil will be good for working today," she said without turning. "The rain has softened it. We should assess the southern field first, then plan our strategy for spring planting." They spent the morning walking the property together. Grisha examined everything with meticulous care, occasionally kneeling to test the soil between her fingers or inspect the roots of plants. She pointed out problems. Rowan had never noticed poor drainage here, evidence of pest infestation there, areas where the soil composition was badly unbalanced. "You will need to plant cover crops before winter," she said as they stood at the edge of the southern field. "Winter rye or hairy vetch. They will die in the frost, and we will till them under in spring. That will add nutrients back to the soil. Then we rotate your planting, put beans here next year since they fix nitrogen. Follow with wheat the year after. Let this section lie fallow the 3rd year." "That means less crop to sell in the short term," Rowan said, calculating in his head. "But more yield in the long term and sustainable production instead of depleting the land until it is worthless." Grisha looked at him. "I assume you want this farm to support you for years to come, not just squeeze out one more desperate harvest." "You are right. It is just winter is coming, and my reserves are limited. Then we supplement. Hunt game, Gather late-season plants, possibly trade with your neighbors if any of them are willing to deal with someone who owns an orc. The bitterness in her voice made him wince. Are you worried about how the neighbors will react? I know how they will react. I have seen how humans treat my kind. She started walking toward the house. But we need seed for the cover crops, which means going into town, unless you plan to keep me hidden like a shameful secret. No, Rowan said firmly. You are helping me save my farm. Anyone who has a problem with that can answer to me. Her expression was skeptical, but she did not argue. They made the trip to town 2 days later, pulling Rowan's small cart to carry seed. The reaction was exactly as bad as Grisha had predicted. People crossed the street to avoid them. Shopkeepers refused to serve them. Children threw stones until their parents called them back, though the parents looked like they wanted to join in. The seed merchant, a sour-faced man named Garvey, initially refused to sell to them at all. I will not have that creature in my shop, he declared loudly enough for the gathering crowd to hear. That creature is a master of agriculture with more knowledge in her smallest tusk than you have in your entire body, Rowan said, surprised by the anger in his own voice. And I am a paying customer. Sell me the winter rye and vetch seed, or I will make sure everyone knows you turned away honest business. Honest? You brought an orc into town. I brought my farm consultant into town, Rowan corrected. The same consultant who identified that you are selling last year's seed at this year's prices. Look at the color and smell. That seed is at least 16 months old, which means lower germination rates. Garvey sputtered, but several other customers were now examining the seed with new suspicion. Rowan had no idea if Grisha was right about the seed's age, but her slight nod told him his gamble had paid off. Fine, Garvey snapped. But I want payment up front, and then both of you get out. They completed the transaction quickly and loaded the seed into the cart. As they left town, Rowan noticed Grisha was shaking slightly. Are you all right? He asked once they were safely on the road. I am fine. I am used to such treatment. That does not make it acceptable. No, but it is reality. She walked in silence for a moment. You defended me. That was foolish. Someone needed to. You will make enemies doing that. Your neighbors already distrust you for harboring me. Publicly taking my side will make it worse. Let them think what they want. I know the truth. Grisha studied him with an expression he could not read. You are a strange man, Rowan Thatcher. So I have been told. Over the following weeks, they fell into a routine. Grisha directed the farm work with expert precision, teaching Rowan techniques he had never encountered. They planted the cover crops in the southern field, repaired the barn roof together, and spent evenings by the fire while Grisha taught him about soil science, plant biology, and sustainable agriculture. In return, Rowan shared what he knew about the local area, the best hunting spots, and the quirks of frontier weather patterns. Slowly, carefully, they built something that resembled friendship. Grisha's sharp tongue never quite softened, but her barbed comments took on a teasing quality rather than pure defensiveness. Rowan learned to read her moods, to know when she needed space and when she craved conversation. They stopped sleeping with such rigid distance between them, unconsciously drifting closer until most mornings, Rowan woke to find her back pressed against his side, seeking warmth in the increasingly cold nights. He tried not to think too much about how natural it felt, sharing his space with her. How much he looked forward to their evening conversations. How his heart jumped a little when she smiled, which happened more and more frequently as the weeks passed. The first snow came in late November. Rowan returned from checking the trap lines to find Grisha in the barn, talking quietly to the cow they had managed to purchase with money from selling firewood. The old animal had been nearly dead when they bought her, but under Grisha's care she had recovered and was now producing decent milk again. "You are going to spoil Blossom," Rowan said, announcing his presence. Grisha looked up, unembarrassed, and said, "She appreciates good conversation. Unlike some humans I know. I thought my conversation was improving under your tutelage. There is improvement, and then there is competence. You have achieved the former but not yet the latter." He grinned and held up the 3 rabbits he had trapped. "Does this buy me any points toward competence? It buys you my gratitude, which is far more valuable." She stood and brushed straw from her trousers. "I will prepare them for dinner." They worked together in the kitchen, Grisha skinning the rabbits with practiced efficiency while Rowan prepared vegetables for stew. The domesticity of it struck him suddenly how comfortable this had become, how right it felt to move around each other in the small space, anticipating each other's needs without words. "Grisha," he said suddenly, "are you happy here?" Her hand stilled on the knife. "Why do you ask?" "I just want to make sure you are not staying out of obligation or fear. You are free to leave whenever you want. I meant that." She set down the knife and turned to face him fully. "Where would I go, Rowan? I told you this already. You could go east to the territories. There are mixed settlements there, orcs and humans living together. I could give you money for passage, a letter of introduction, and leave you here alone to bungle the spring planting." She shook her head. "Besides, I am happy here, happier than I expected to be." Her voice softened. "You have given me something I did not think I would ever have again. A home, purpose, respect. Do not ask me to give that up." "I would never ask that. I just wanted to make sure you knew you had choices." "I do know, and I choose to stay." She held his gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then she turned back to the rabbits. "Now stop being sentimental and finish those carrots. I am hungry." That night after dinner, they sat by the fire as usual. But the silence felt different somehow, charged with an awareness that had not been there before. Rowan kept glancing at Grisha, noticing things he had tried not to notice: the elegant line of her neck, the strength in her hands, the way firelight turned her green skin to bronze. "You are staring," she said without looking up from the shirt she was mending. "Sorry, I was just thinking. About how lucky I was that day at the auction, that I had exactly 1 copper, that I was foolish enough to bid it." Now she did look at him, her amber eyes reflecting the flames. Luck or foolishness, sometimes the line between them is very thin. "Which do you think it was?" "I think it was a beginning," she said quietly. "What it becomes depends on what we make of it." Rowan wanted to ask what she wanted to make of it, if she felt the same growing attraction that kept him awake at night, if she thought about him the way he thought about her. But fear held his tongue. Fear of rejection, of ruining the friendship they had built, of presuming too much. Instead he said, "I am glad you are here, Grisha. I want you to know that." "I know. And I am glad to be here, Rowan Thatcher, more glad than I can properly express." It was enough. For now it was enough. December brought brutal cold and heavy snows. They spent more time indoors, huddled near the fire, working on indoor tasks like tool repair and planning for spring. The forced proximity intensified the awareness between them. Every accidental touch sent sparks through Rowan's nerves. Every shared glance felt weighted with meaning. One evening, during a particularly fierce blizzard, the fire burned low and they huddled together under every blanket they owned, seeking warmth. "Tell me about your clan," Rowan said into the darkness. "What was it like growing up?" Grisha was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. Then she began to speak, her voice soft with memory. "We lived in the high valleys where the air is thin and clear. Our settlement was built into the mountainside, stone houses with green roofs that grew herbs and vegetables. The clan numbered about 200 farmers, craftspeople, warriors. We were peaceful mostly. We traded with the lowland villages, kept to ourselves, honored the old ways. It sounds beautiful. It was. But it was also suffocating. Everything was prescribed: who you could marry, what work you could do, how you should behave. Women were expected to be demure, obedient. I was neither. She shifted slightly, her shoulder pressing against his. I wanted to learn everything, try everything. I studied with the agriculture master, convinced the weaponsmith to teach me his craft, learned languages from the traders who came through. My mother despaired of me ever fitting in. She was wrong to try to make you fit, Rowan said. Your mind is too valuable to cage. The clan elders did not agree. When I turned 20, they arranged my marriage to Crag, a warrior of high standing. He was 43, had 2 other wives already, and viewed women as property. I refused. My father supported the elders. My mother begged me to comply, but I could not. Her voice hardened. So I left, or was driven out, depending on who tells the story. That took tremendous courage, or tremendous stubbornness. She paused. I meant to find work in a lowland village, use my skills to build a new life. Instead, I was captured by raiders and spent 3 months in a cage, beaten and starved, until I ended up on that auction block where you found me. Some might say the elders were right, that I brought disaster on myself. Then some are fools. Rowan turned to face her in the darkness, though he could barely see her features. You chose freedom over slavery. That is always the right choice, even when the consequences are harsh. You really believe that, with everything in me. He felt her hand find his beneath the blankets, her fingers lacing with his. The touch was electric, intimate in a way that went beyond mere warmth sharing. You are a good man, Rowan Thatcher, she whispered. Better than I deserve. That is absolutely backward. I am the one who does not deserve you. They lay like that for a long time, hands clasped, hearts pounding in the darkness. Rowan wanted desperately to kiss her, to pull her close and confess the feelings that had been growing steadily for weeks. But he could not shake the memory of her words about Crag, about men who viewed women as property. He would not presume, would not push, no matter how much he wanted to. Eventually they fell asleep still holding hands, and when morning came they woke tangled together, her head on his chest and his arm around her shoulders. They separated quickly, awkwardly, neither quite meeting the other's eyes. I will check the animals, Grisha said. I will start breakfast, Rowan replied. They did not speak of it, but something had shifted between them. A door opened that neither was quite ready to walk through. The winter solstice came, the longest night of the year. Rowan had planned nothing special, but when he returned from hunting he found Grisha had transformed the house. Evergreen branches decorated the mantel, filling the air with fresh scent. She had made bread in the shape of stars, and a pot of her special spiced cider warmed by the fire. What is all this? He asked, delighted. A celebration. In my clan we honored the solstice as the turning point, the moment when light begins its return. I thought we should mark it. She looked suddenly uncertain. If that is acceptable to you, it is more than acceptable. It is wonderful. They spent the evening in celebration, eating the special meal Grisha had prepared and drinking the spiced cider. She taught him songs from her clan, old ballads about heroes and harvest, and he shared frontier tales his father had told him. As the night deepened, they stood at the window together, watching the stars wheel overhead. In my clan, we believed that the solstice was a time for new beginnings, Grisha said softly. A time to release the old year and embrace what is to come. What do you want to embrace? Rowan asked, his heart pounding. She turned to face him, her amber eyes luminous in the candlelight. Truth. I want to stop pretending I do not feel what I feel. And what do you feel? Terrified, hopeful, alive in a way I have not been since before my exile. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. I feel drawn to you, Rowan, not out of gratitude or obligation, but something deeper, something I did not think I would ever feel for a human. Rowan covered her hand with his own. I feel the same. I have for weeks now, but I did not want to presume, did not want to make you uncomfortable in the home we share. You could never make me uncomfortable, you who have shown me only kindness and respect. She stepped closer. I know the world will not approve. Humans and orcs are not supposed to, he kissed her then, unable to hold back any longer. Her lips were soft against his, and she made a small sound of surprise before kissing him back with fierce intensity. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her close, and her hands tangled in his hair. The kiss deepened, months of unspoken longing pouring out in that single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grisha was smiling. That was worth waiting for, she said, only worth. I need to improve my technique. Perhaps you should practice, extensively. So he did, kissing her again and again until they were both dizzy with it. They stumbled toward the bed, still locked together, and collapsed onto it in a tangle of limbs and laughter. But when Rowan's hands moved to the hem of her shirt, Grisha caught them gently. Not yet, she said. I want to eventually, but I need time. I need to trust that this is real, that you will not wake up tomorrow and regret choosing an orc. I could never regret this, never regret you. Then give me time to believe that. She kissed him softly. For tonight, can we just hold each other? For tonight, and as many nights as you need. They lay down together properly this time, not awkwardly keeping distance but curled together intentionally. Grisha's head rested on his chest, his arms wrapped around her, her leg thrown over his. It felt perfect, like two pieces of a puzzle finally finding their match. Rowan, she murmured sleepily. Yes, happy solstice. Happy solstice, Grisha. January brought unexpected challenges. A pack of wolves driven by hunger began stalking the livestock. Rowan and Grisha took turns keeping watch at night, armed with his old militia spear and a heavy staff. They managed to drive the pack off twice, but on the third attempt, one of the wolves broke through Rowan's guard and slashed his leg open before Grisha killed it with a brutal strike to the skull. Rowan collapsed, blood pouring from the wound. Grisha dragged him inside, her face pale but determined. She worked with steady hands, cleaning the wound with boiled water, stitching it closed with needle and thread, bandaging it tightly. You need to rest, she ordered. No arguments. That wound needs time to heal properly. The animals, I will handle them. I will handle everything. You just focus on not dying of infection. For the next 2 weeks, Grisha managed the farm alone while Rowan healed. She hauled water, tended the animals, set and checked the trap lines, and still found time to change his bandages and force broth down his throat. Rowan watched her with growing admiration and love, seeing the strength he had only glimpsed before. You are magnificent, he told her one evening as she checked his stitches. I am efficient. There is a difference. No, I mean it. You could have run when I was injured, taken whatever supplies you needed and struck out on your own, but you stayed. You took care of me. Of course I stayed. She looked at him like he was being deliberately obtuse. I love you, you foolish man. Where else would I go? The words hung in the air between them. Grisha's eyes widened as she realized what she had said, but she did not take it back. You love me? Rowan asked, his heart racing. Yes. Yes, I love you. Her voice was defiant now, daring him to reject her. I know it is mad that we have only known each other a few months, that the world will never accept us, but I do not care. I love you, Rowan Thatcher. I love you too, he said, pulling her down for a kiss. I have loved you since you corrected my grammar on the auction platform. I just did not have the courage to say it." She laughed against his mouth, the sound full of joy and relief. "We are both fools then, the best kind of fools." As the wound healed and Rowan regained his strength, their relationship deepened. They talked for hours about everything and nothing: their hopes for the farm, their fears about the future, their memories of the past. They kissed often, learning each other's preferences, building trust through patient intimacy. One night in late February, Grisha finally told him she was ready for more. They made love slowly, carefully, exploring each other with wonder and reverence. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Rowan felt more complete than he ever had in his life. "I want you to stay forever," he whispered into her hair. "Not as my employee or even just as my lover, as my partner, my wife." Grisha went very still. "Are you proposing marriage?" "Not officially. Not yet. I want to do it properly, with a ring and a romantic gesture and everything you deserve. But I needed you to know my intentions, that this is not temporary for me, that I want to build a life with you." "Marriage between humans and orcs is illegal in most provinces," she said quietly. "Not in the Eastern Territories. We could travel there in the spring after planting, make it official. You would do that, leave your home, your land. This land means nothing without you." "Home is wherever you are." She rolled over to face him, tears glistening in her amber eyes. "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you, Rowan Thatcher, officially, properly, with whatever rings and romantic gestures you can cobble together." She kissed him fiercely. "I will be your partner, your wife, your everything." They held each other through the night, making quiet plans for their future. They would finish the spring planting, harvest the early crops, then make the journey east. Find a settlement where they could marry legally. Perhaps stay there, perhaps return. That remained to be decided. The important thing was that they would be together. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The trouble started in early March when Rowan went to town for supplies. He returned to find Grisha white-faced and shaking, a crude notice nailed to their door. It was written in an angry scrawl, but the message was clear: "Get rid of the orc or face consequences." "This is from the neighbors," Grisha said, her voice tight. "They have been complaining about me to the town council, spreading rumors that I am dangerous, that I will bring other orcs down on them." "That is ridiculous. You have done nothing but help me restore this farm. Truth does not matter to frighten people." She crumpled the notice. "Maybe I should leave, Rowan, go east on my own. Then you can keep your land, your place in the community." "Absolutely not. We face this together." But the harassment escalated. Someone poisoned their well, forcing them to haul water from the stream. Their fence was torn down, letting the cow wander. Rocks were thrown through their windows in the night. The seed merchant refused to sell to them, and other shops followed suit. Through it all, Rowan refused to bend. He filed complaints with the town magistrate, though they were ignored. He confronted neighbors, though they denied involvement. He protected Grisha as best he could, but the constant stress was wearing on both of them. The situation came to a head in mid-April. Rowan and Grisha were in the southern field, planting the spring crops they had carefully planned. A group of men from town appeared at the edge of the property, 8 of them, armed with clubs and farming tools. "Time to leave, orc," the leader called out. It was Garve, the seed merchant, his face twisted with hate. "You have contaminated this land long enough." "This is my property," Rowan said, stepping in front of Grisha. "And Grisha is under my protection. You are trespassing." "Your protection?" Garve spat. "You are a disgrace, Thatcher, bedding down with a monster. Everyone knows what you two do in that house. It is unnatural." "The only unnatural thing here is your hatred." Rowan gripped his spade like a weapon. Leave, now, or what? You will fight all of us, Garvey laughed. We outnumber you, we will run the orc off, and if you try to stop us, well, accidents happen. The men advanced. Rowan raised his spade, prepared to fight, but Grisha stepped forward. Stop, she said, her voice calm and clear. You want me gone, fine, I will leave, but I have conditions. Grisha, no, Rowan started. She silenced him with a look. You will give Rowan 100 silver pieces as compensation for the harassment and property damage. You will leave him alone to work his farm in peace. And you will put all of this in writing, signed by all of you, so he has legal protection. Or, Garvey sneered, or I demonstrate those 17 ways to kill a man I mentioned once. I am betting I can take at least 4 of you before you bring me down. Which 4 want to die first? The threat hung in the air. Looking at Grisha, at the warrior stance she had adopted, the coldness in her amber eyes, the men believed her. Several shifted nervously. 50 silver, Garvey countered. And the written agreement. But you leave today and never come back. 100, Grisha said flatly. And I leave in 3 days after we finish the planting. That is my final offer. The men conferred in whispers. Finally, Garvey nodded. Fine, 3 days. But if you are not gone by sunset on the 3rd day, we come back with torches. They left, and Rowan rounded on Grisha. What are you doing? We were going to leave together. We cannot, do you not see? They will follow us, attack us on the road, and you would lose the farm, everything your father left you. She cupped his face. This way you keep your land, you have money to hire help to buy proper equipment, you will be safe. I do not care about safe, I care about you, and I care about you enough to do this. Tears spilled down her green cheeks. I love you, Rowan, but love is not always enough. They argued through the night, but Grisha would not budge. She had made her decision. The next 3 days passed in agonizing slowness. They planted the remaining crops together, working side by side as they had for months. In the evenings they held each other, memorizing the feel of each other's touch. On the final morning, Garvey and his men returned with the written agreement and a pouch of 100 silver pieces. Grisha had packed a small bag with supplies and the clothes Rowan had given her. Everything else, the farm, the life they had built, she left behind. I will find you, Rowan promised desperately as she prepared to leave. I will sell the farm, come east, search every settlement until I find you. Do not, Grisha said, though her voice broke. Build your life here. Find a nice human woman, be happy. I could never be happy without you. Then we are both doomed to sadness. She kissed him one last time, pouring all her love and grief into it. Goodbye, Rowan Thatcher. Thank you for seeing me as a person when no one else would. She walked away without looking back, and Rowan let her go, because what else could he do? Fight 8 armed men. Force her to stay where she was not wanted. He watched until she disappeared over the hill, then collapsed to his knees and wept. The weeks that followed were the darkest of Rowan's life. He went through the motions of farm work mechanically, tending the crops Grisha had helped him plant. The house felt empty without her presence. The bed felt cold. Food had no taste. He caught himself starting to tell her something, only to remember she was gone. The neighbors, satisfied that the problem was solved, left him alone. A few even tried to be friendly, as if nothing had happened. Rowan could barely look at them without rage choking him. The southern field flourished, Grisha's techniques proving as effective as promised. The cover crops had worked perfectly, and the new planting showed vibrant growth. Every success felt hollow. What was the point of a thriving farm with no one to share it with? A month after Grisha left, Rowan's neighbor to the north, a widow named Hedda Fairweather, came by with a basket of fresh bread. I heard what happened, she said, her kind face creased with concern. I want you to know, not all of us agreed with running that orc woman off. Some of us remember when she helped rescue the Miller children from the flood, how she taught several of the farm wives better preserving techniques. What Garvey and his friends did was wrong. Then why did no one stand up for her? Rowan asked bitterly. Fear, mostly. Garvey has influence in town and people are scared of being targeted themselves. Hedda shook her head sadly. I am sorry, Rowan, truly. She seemed like a good person. She was. She is. He looked at Hedda directly. I love her. I asked her to marry me. Hedda's eyes widened, but to her credit, she did not recoil. Then why did you let her go? Because she thought she was protecting me, and maybe she was right. Maybe there is no place in this world for what we wanted. Maybe, Hedda said quietly, or maybe you need to fight harder for it. After she left, Rowan sat alone, turning her words over in his mind. He thought about everything Grisha had taught him about crop rotation and soil science, yes, but also about courage. About standing up for what was right even when the world said you were wrong. She had chosen exile over surrendering her autonomy, had endured captivity without breaking, had walked away from the man she loved to protect him, and what had he done? Let her leave, given up without a real fight. Rowan stood and looked around his small house, at the farm his father had left him, at the land he had spent years struggling to maintain. It was all worthless without Grisha. He made his decision. The next morning, Rowan went to town and found the magistrate. He filed paperwork to sell the farm, with Hedda Fairweather as his agent to handle the transaction in his absence. Then he packed his belongings, loaded his wagon, and began the journey east. He asked about Grisha in every village and settlement he passed. An orc woman, traveling alone, green skin and amber eyes, probably heading east. Most people remembered seeing her. It was rare enough for a single orc to travel through human lands that she left an impression. She was 2 weeks ahead of him, maybe 3. Rowan pushed hard, sleeping in the wagon, eating on the move. The spring rains turned roads to mud, slowing his progress. Twice he had to stop to repair broken wheels. But he kept going, driven by the desperate hope that he could catch up, that she would forgive him for letting her leave in the first place. As he entered the Eastern Territories, the landscape began to change. The settlements here were different, mixed populations of humans, orcs, and even a few dwarves and halflings. The architecture blended styles, and the marketplaces sold goods from a dozen different cultures. This was where they had planned to come together, to marry and build their life. In a town called Riverwatch, Rowan finally got solid information. A blacksmith, himself an orc with gray-streaked hair, remembered Grisha well. She came through about 10 days ago, he said. Smart woman. We talked about metallurgy for 2 hours. Said she was heading to Thornbrook, that is a farming community about 30 miles north. They were looking for an agriculture specialist, and I gave her the name of the headman there. Thank you, Rowan said, his heart pounding with renewed hope. Thank you so much. He made the 30 miles in record time, arriving in Thornbrook as the sun set. It was a prosperous-looking settlement, with well-tended fields and sturdy buildings. Mixed families worked side by side, humans and orcs together without apparent tension. It was everything they had dreamed of. Rowan found the headman's house and knocked urgently. An elderly orc woman answered, her expression curious. I am looking for someone, Rowan said breathlessly. An orc woman named Grisha. I was told she came here. The woman's expression shuddered. And who are you? My name is Rowan Thatcher. I need to speak with her, please. Wait here. The woman disappeared inside. Rowan paced anxiously, running through what he would say, how he would explain. Whether she would even want to see him after he let her go. When the door opened again, it was not the elderly orc. It was Grisha. She stood in the doorway, amber eyes wide with shock. She looked healthy, well-fed, wearing new clothes. But the joy that had begun to return to her face in their final weeks together was gone, replaced by cautious hope and wariness. "Rowan," she whispered. Why are you? "I sold the farm," he said in a rush. "Or I am selling it. Hedda is handling it. I packed up everything and followed you because I am an idiot who let you walk away when I should have fought to keep you. I love you, Grisha. I love you more than land, more than home, more than the good opinion of people who do not deserve it. And I am here to ask you, properly this time, if you will marry me." He dropped to one knee right there on the doorstep and pulled out the ring he had bought in Riverwatch, simple silver with a small green stone. "I know I already asked and you already said yes, but that was before I failed you, so I am asking again. Grisha, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you?" Tears poured down her face. "You fool, you beautiful, ridiculous fool. Is that a yes?" She pulled him to his feet and kissed him with desperate intensity. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." They held each other in the doorway, both crying and laughing. The elderly orc woman cleared her throat politely. "Perhaps you two could come inside. You are letting the heat out." They stumbled into the house together, still clinging to each other. The woman introduced herself as Mara, Thornbrook's healer and unofficial matchmaker. "Grisha has been staying with me while she negotiates with the farming cooperative," Mara explained. "Poor girl has been miserable, trying to act like her heart was not broken." "I thought he would stay on his farm," Grisha said, looking up at Rowan. "I thought he would be safe and happy there. I would never be happy without you, and that farm was never truly home. You are my home, Grisha." "So what now?" she asked. "Where will we go? Here, if you will have me. I have some skill with farming, though nothing compared to yours, and I can learn other trades. As long as we are together, I do not care what we do." Mara beamed. "Well, as it happens, Thornbrook could use someone with your experience in frontier farming. And we certainly have room for a married couple. Shall we discuss details over dinner?" They married 3 days later in a simple ceremony attended by the entire Thornbrook community. Grisha wore a dress in orc style, deep green with intricate embroidery, her hair woven with spring flowers. Rowan wore his best clothes, his heart so full he thought it might burst. The ceremony blended human and orc traditions. They exchanged rings and spoke vows before witnesses. They shared wine from a single cup and bread from a single loaf. When the officiant pronounced them married, the gathered crowd erupted in cheers. At the celebration feast that followed, Grisha pulled Rowan aside to a quiet corner. "I still cannot quite believe this is real," she admitted. "That we made it here, that we are actually married. Believe it." Rowan kissed her softly. "You are stuck with me now. For better or worse, as the vows say, mostly for better, I hope, definitely for better, though I may occasionally burn dinner. Then it is good I know how to cook." She laughed, the sound bright with genuine happiness. "We are going to have a good life here, Rowan. I can feel it." She was right. Over the following months and years, they built something beautiful in Thornbrook. Grisha became the community's master of agriculture, teaching her techniques to anyone interested. Rowan worked alongside her, learning and growing, eventually developing his own specialties in orchard management and beekeeping. They bought a small plot of land and built a house together, every nail and board a joint effort. They planted an orchard and a garden, experimented with new growing techniques, and became pillars of the community. Their home was always open, a place where anyone was welcome regardless of species or background. The prejudice they had faced in Rowan's hometown seemed like a distant nightmare here. Oh, there were still challenges: occasional travelers who objected to their marriage, or news from other provinces where tensions remained high. But in Thornbrook, they were simply Rowan and Grisha Thatcher, farmers, and friends. 2 years after their arrival, Grisha came to Rowan with news that made him shout with joy and sweep her into his arms. She was pregnant. Their child, a daughter, was born in the spring with her mother's green skin and her father's blue eyes. They named her Lyra, and she grew up surrounded by love in a community that celebrated her mixed heritage rather than condemning it. On quiet evenings, after Lyra was asleep and the day's work complete, Rowan and Grisha would sit together on their porch, watching the sun set over their orchards. Sometimes they talked about the past, about that auction day that changed both their lives. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, content in the life they had built. "You ever regret it?" Grisha asked one such evening. "Giving up your family's farm, leaving everything you knew?" "Not for a single moment," Rowan said honestly. "That farm was my father's dream, not mine. This," he gestured at their home, their land, their life together, "this is my dream. You are my dream, Grisha." "Even though I cost you 1 whole copper," she teased. "Best copper I ever spent." She leaned against him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. In the house behind them, their daughter slept peacefully. Around them, the community they had helped build thrived. Before them stretched years of shared life, shared work, shared love. Years later, when Lyra was grown with children of her own, she would ask her parents how they met. Rowan and Grisha would exchange one of their speaking looks, the kind that came from decades of partnership, and smile. "Your father bought me at an auction for 1 copper, Grisha would say. "Your mother's first words made my jaw drop," Rowan would add. And then together, they would tell the story of prejudice overcome, of love discovered in unexpected places, of 2 people who dared to build a life together despite a world that said they should not. It was a story of courage and hope, of second chances and new beginnings. But most of all, it was a story of how sometimes the best things in life are worth far more than anyone realizes. How a single copper, spent in kindness rather than cruelty, can change everything. How the person nobody wanted can become the person somebody treasures above all else. Rowan never regretted that day in the marketplace, when he threw away his last coin on a foolish gamble. Because that gamble brought him Grisha, brilliant, fierce, loving Grisha, and a life richer than any amount of gold could buy. They lived out their days in Thornbrook, growing old together as the community flourished around them. Rowan's hair went gray and his hands grew arthritic, but they still worked the land side by side every day. Grisha's tusks yellowed with age and her skin grew wrinkled, but her amber eyes never lost their fire, and her mind remained sharp as ever. When Rowan finally passed, surrounded by children and grandchildren in the house he had built with his own hands, his last words were for Grisha. "Best copper I ever spent," he whispered, and she held his hand and agreed through her tears. Grisha lived another 5 years, teaching the next generation everything she knew about agriculture and about building a better world. When her time came, she went peacefully in her sleep, and the entire community mourned the passing of one of their founders. They buried Rowan and Grisha side by side on a hill overlooking their orchard, under a tree they had planted together in their first year in Thornbrook. On the shared headstone, their children inscribed a simple epitaph: 2 hearts, 1 copper, infinite love. And in Thornbrook, for generations to come, young couples in love would visit that grave and leave copper coins as offerings, hoping some of that miraculous luck would bless their own relationships. The story of Rowan and Grisha became legend, proof that love could transcend prejudice, that courage could build bridges, and that sometimes the most valuable things in life cost only a single copper coin, and the willingness to see another person's true worth. Their legacy lived on not just in their descendants, but in the very foundation of Thornbrook, a place where species mingled freely, where prejudice had no power, where anyone could find acceptance and home. A place built on the principle that every person, regardless of their appearance or origin, deserved dignity, respect, and the chance to be loved. It all started with an auction, a orc woman nobody wanted, and a young farmer with nothing but one copper coin and a heart open enough to recognize something precious when he saw it. And from that unlikely beginning grew a love story for the ages, a family that spanned generations, and a community that changed the world, one person at a time. The end.